Young people don't want to be involved in political activism. They want to get themselves sorted out first. Many of those young people, though, I think want to behave nobly and help build a better society, a stronger civic square, if I can put it that way, and good on them. That's terrific. That's important. They're very disillusioned with politics, and yet we have to govern our country. We have to make certain that the rules are set, if you like, and that we maximise everybody's opportunities to live in freedom and in security. When young people have, if you like, grounded themselves and feel ready to act nobly in the public square, what should they do? How can they make a difference? They want to make a difference. How do they go about it?
Oh, more power to them, I think. But I think, they start by realizing they don't know anything and by starting to learn. And if they learn and work and discipline themselves, the opportunities to expand will come naturally because people will notice them. Like, look, if you work with competent people, hyper-competent people, one of the things you learn is that hyper-competent people are always looking for young people to mentor.
Yeah.
They're starving and hoping that someone will come along who has a lot of potential, and then what they'll do is offer them an opportunity. And I keep my eye out at the university and in my private work as well, all the time for young people who've got something to contribute. Say, oh, you look like you're sharp. Let's find out. Here's a task. Why don't you go try this? And then they come back and knock it out of the park, and you think, oh, that's good, because I got 20 more things here that need doing that I can't do. I've got more opportunities than I know what to do with. Here's another one. And so the thing is that if you develop your competence and you discipline yourself and you start to make that manifest in any hierarchy that's even vaguely competent, you'll have more opportunities come your way than you'll know what to do with. So it'll happen organically. So, and it is the way of the world. And well, if that isn't happening in the organization that you're working with and you're working diligently and you have your act together, then it's time to find a different organization. But generally speaking, most organizations aren't that corrupt. Some are.
Interesting. I'd say that we worship youth culture in a way. But one of the things I've noticed about youth is that overwhelmingly, if they have the opportunity to tap into the wisdom of an older person, to be mentored, they go looking for it. They're very keen for it.
Well, it's part of the human proclivity to admire and imitate. One of the things that drives us forward, we don't only learn by facts. In fact, we hardly learn by facts at all. We learn by stories and we learn by imitation, and we imitate those we admire. And we admire those who are competent. And so if you find someone who knows what you don't and can operate effectively in the world in a manner that you would like to but can't, then you're going to admire them. And if you admire them, you're going to open the door to have them mentor you. And that's really fundamental to human cognition and human psychological development. It's the catalyst for human development because we're deeply imitative. It's the thing that distinguishes us from other creatures, perhaps even more fundamentally than language use. If you know how to do something and I watch you do it, I can learn to do it without having to go through all the pain that you had to go through to learn it. It's such a gift.
That's why history is so important. Our personal history, if you like, our family history. I was thinking the other day that my grandfather made a mistake with my father on the farm, that I am determined, because I can learn from that, not to repeat with my own son on the farm. And then there's, of course, the broader cultural history, which is why I believe, and I think you and I share this view, we ought to learn from our history. We ought to learn from the horrors of collectivism in Soviet Russia. We ought to be honest about it. We should teach our young people at the same time as we're honest about the warts in our own cultural history, but we're also honest about the nobility. For example, the mighty push to abolish slavery, surely the greatest human rights movement of all time. We ought to know about it. It's noble. It was led by noble people who struggled against extraordinary odds for a long time.
Yes, exactly. And slavery was a human universal. So it's an amazing, miraculous attainment. It's a miraculous attainment, absolutely. And what we're supposed to be doing in the universities is separating the wheat from the chaff, not dispensing with everything as if it's chaff, because we don't want to put in the effort to discriminate. And so it's easier, well, it's just all corrupt. It's like, no, it's not. People aren't starving to death anymore, and societies are increasingly free, and children aren't dying in the massive numbers that they once died in, and people's life expectancy has doubled. like things are going pretty well, don't muck it up. And we need to figure out why. And we need to take stock of the things that we did in the past that were wrong, obviously. But that doesn't mean that everything everyone did in the past was wrong. That's not thinking. That's just reflexive resentment masquerading as intellectual superiority. There's nothing about it that's good.
Well, you've been incredibly generous with your time. Can we wrap up? Let's just think through, what would we say in terms of people looking for solutions in academia, in the media, in politics? How do we, if you like, start the movement to reclaim what you called evidence-based empirical decision, evidence in decision making? In other words, learn to think again and stop being so emotional. There's a place for emotion, but there's a place for thinking.
I think, well, I mean, if you're a university student, the first thing you want to note is that you're there to learn to think and to write and to read and to speak. That's what you're there to do. And the reason you're there to do that is because that makes you incredibly competent. Because you're going to have to communicate with people for the rest of your life. And if your communication has depth and clarity, then you can see your way forward and you can bring other people aboard and you can do great things. And so it's super useful to get a real liberal arts education, because it can make you into a great communicator and thinker. If you're going to university, read the great books. And you can find professors who will teach you that, but that's what you're there to do. You're there to spend 4 years immersing yourself in the imitation of the greatest people that our culture has produced. And if you think, well, there were no great people, well, then you might as well not go to university, because university is the storehouse of the thoughts of great people. And if you dispense with the whole notion of great, then, well, maybe you're there to become a political activist, but that's not university. That's something else. That's like an ideological cult. And maybe that's what you want. And I mean, you'll pay the price for that one way or the other. But you, even as a university student, you have to take on the burden of educating yourself to a large degree. But you have to decide that that's what you want and that that's what you need. In terms of your own personal life, I have a program that I developed with my colleagues called the Future Authoring Program. It's at selfauthoring.com, and it helps people develop a vision for their life along about 6 fundamental dimensions: family, education, mental and physical health, career, avoidance of temptation like drug and alcohol use. We tried to parse out use of time, productive and meaningful use of time outside of work. We tried to parameterize a decent life, and then to guide people through the process of imagining what their life could be like if they put it together properly. And you need to develop a vision for your life and a sense of who you could be if you were the character that you could be. And thinking through that and articulating it is actually part of, well, it should be part of a classic liberal arts education, because the whole point of education, apart from the technical end, which is important, is to produce a noble citizen. That's the point, not to produce a bloody political activist.
Well, and we should keep in mind, though, of course, even at Chatswood that night, a lot of those people, most of them, are not at university. So they're not excluded either from, in any way, shape or form, from broadening their horizon.
It's not like they're not doing important things. Like working men, for example, working people in general, I don't care what they're doing. If they're working at a diner as a waiter, or they're laying bricks, or working a forklift, or they're plumbers, or these people are bloody important. They build the infrastructure. And there's a huge difference between a craftsman who takes pride and care in what he's doing and contributes to his family and the community in that nobility of work, and someone who does a slipshod and haphazard job. There's great nobility in genuine work. So, and I believe that you have just as much power, let's say, as much authority, as much clout as a forthright and honest working person as you do as an intellectual. And I mean, you can be very successful as a working person if you're diligent and honest and committed and competent and aiming up. Because look, I do believe that each person is a center of the world, and you have what you need right at that center. And maybe you're not intellectual, but you're good with your hands and you're practical and solid, and people can rely on you. It's like, man, that's a big deal, because then when their roof blows off in the middle of a storm, they can call you up and you're there in an hour and you put the damn thing back together and hooray for you. All of these things are important. And so there's great nobility in working class work as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you for watching this episode. If you value vital conversations like this one, please like, share, subscribe, and join the conversation.